I feel like I am the absolute last person to get their April TBR up, but you know what? We're rolling with it. Hello everybody, my name is Danny and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my April Skee-B-R TBR, where I will decide all the books that I'm reading in April. But before we get there, I have to talk about everything that I read in March. And a little bit of a disclaimer, I only read manga, and I read a lot of it. So rather than go into detail about each specific volume, I'm just going to talk about the series as a whole, because I did finish off 5 series that I either had started previously or didn't start until this month. I read the whole thing, and so that's a lot of volumes, and I don't think any of us want me to go into the detail about them. So first up we have Demon Slayer, which I read for a genre prompt. I had to pick a historical book, and I gave this series a 9 out of 10. It's so good. I'm not surprised that I loved it so much because I do adore the anime. The first season of the anime, I literally watched it, and then like 2 weeks later I'm like, oh my god, this was so good, I have to watch it again immediately. So yeah, not surprised I love this so much. I did have a couple of issues with it. One thing is that I wish some characters were introduced a lot earlier in the story than they actually were, because I feel like then their arcs, their sacrifices, things that they do would have a lot more impact with the reader than they do now. I mean, they still do now. There's still an emotional hit with every single character in the series, but like, I feel like it could have been improved upon if we got to know these characters a little bit earlier and gotten more of their character in the story. I also was not a fan of the last chapter because it kind of just felt like a really useless epilogue. Even though it was super cute and made me smile, it just wasn't necessary. And I would recommend this series to people who like action, supernatural elements, and both real family and found family dynamics. Next up was The Girl from the Other Side, which I read for a length prompt, which I'm kind of realizing I got wrong. I think the length prompt was to read something between 201 and 300 pages, and apparently all the volumes in this series are 180 to 190 pages, so it was a little short, but what's done is done. We're gonna roll with it. I gave this a 9 out of 10 as well, and I loved this story. I just feel like there was something that I can't quite put my finger on that was missing from it that would have given it that extra push to be the 10 out of 10. The art style is just absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you can see, but there's these like fantastic details, even just in the cover, but like in the actual pages it's even better, and there's this like dichotomy between light and dark, and it just looks so beautiful. I would recommend this series again to people who like supernatural elements and found family dynamics, but also people who enjoy undertones of religious drama and religious trauma. Then I had to read Devil's Line, which was for an aesthetic prompt, and I had to pick an ebook, and I gave this series 8 out of 10, which is a lot higher than I expected, because I started the series way back in September of last year, just because I had the first volume for free through the Google Play library, and I had no idea what it was about, and it really surprised me because it's like a supernatural romance kind of thing, but I actually really liked the story. I liked the ideas and themes going on a little bit more than I liked the execution. There were definitely some issues with the storytelling, but not awful enough that I couldn't overlook them for the sake of the story and the characters that I really liked. I was telling my boyfriend about this series, and he was like, huh, sounds like Tokyo Ghoul, but with smut in it. I can't confirm that because he hasn't actually read the series, and I have yet to read Tokyo Ghoul, but if you like Tokyo Ghoul and you like smut, you'll probably like Devil's Line, I guess. There is a sequel to this coming out, appropriately named Devil's Line 2, that I definitely want to pick up at some point, and so I'm very excited for that. And I would recommend this series to people who like supernatural romance, obviously, and also cop/political intrigue, and also stories that have a surprising amount of queer characters. Now, the main characters, like the two in the romance, are straight, but the secondary and background characters, like so many of them are queer, and that was such a nice surprise. Then I read The Drifting Classroom, which was for another genre prompt where I had to pick a horror, mystery, or thriller, and I gave this a 6 out of 10. This is a classic horror manga from the 70s, and it was wild from start to finish. I kind of want to compare it to Lord of the Flies, but I've never actually read Lord of the Flies, so I'm kind of just going off of vibes here. But yeah, it was interesting. I really don't think I can tell you like what happened because there was just so much straight out the gate. Like I said, it was wild from start to finish. And I just, I don't know. It was pretty solidly good throughout until like the ending it kind of petered off into just like meh territory, which is why I gave it a 6 out of 10. But there are certainly people out there who would enjoy this way more than I did, and I would recommend it to people who like horror, obviously, because it's a horror manga. People who like pulp style sci-fi stories, that's a tongue twister, and also stories that deal with time in a funky way. And my last Skee-B-R read was my punishment jar pick, and that was Hell's Paradise, which I gave a 10 out of 10. Holy crap, this story is so good. It is my favorite manga of all time now, which I did not expect going into it, but there are 13 volumes in the series, and every single one of them got either a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 because they were just so good, and I'm obsessed. I love this so much, and I cannot wait for the anime adaptation, which is coming out, I think, the end of this year, potentially. Not sure on that, but yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I would recommend this to people who like religious imagery, kick-ass fight scenes, and unexpected alliances that turn into genuine friendships and relationships because this story does that really well. Then, aside from my Skee-B-R reads, I picked up Jujutsu Kaisen 0, which was actually a reread for me, and the first time I read it, I gave it a 7 out of 10, but this time around, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I picked this up because the movie adaptation came out this month, and I wanted to refresh myself on the story before I watched the movie, because it has been quite a bit since I read this, and it was just really good. The movie was so good. I really like the additions that they made, so like stuff that wasn't in this volume but they put in the movie because they felt kind of like little Easter eggs for people who have seen the anime series for Jujutsu Kaisen. And I would recommend this volume and kind of Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole to people who like urban fantasy, anxious protagonists, and the concept of love as a form of corruption because that is a big thing in this volume. And finally, I read My Hero Academia Volume 30. I gave this a 7 out of 10, and honestly, probably would have gotten a higher score if it hadn't been 6 months between me reading Volume 30, 39, no, Volume 29 and Volume 30. But that's a little bit on me because I like to read them as the volumes physically release and not like as the chapters come out weekly. So like I didn't have to wait 6 months, but I did. But also, maybe it wouldn't have gotten a higher score because there are just some things I didn't like about it. So at the end of volume 29, there were two big cliffhangers, one involving Bakugo and one involving Red Riot. And the one involving Bakugo was resolved almost immediately in this volume, like as if it was nothing. And then the one involving Red Riot wasn't like explicitly resolved. They just kind of moved on with that plot thread, and I'm like, okay, I guess he's fine then. I don't know, it was a little weird, but at the end, I did enjoy it, and I'm very glad that I do not have to wait so long for volume 31. I think it's only 3 months before that one comes out. And with all of that out of the way, it is time for my Skee-B-R rolls. First, I would like to mention that I am participating in the magical readathon hosted by G over at the channel Book Roast, and there are 5 different prompts that I have to cover for that. I will not explain the readathon because that would take too long and I would not do it justice, so I will just link her video down in the description for you guys to check out if you're interested. But basically, I will be doing my rolls, and if I can fit the books that I pick for those rolls into the prompts for the magical readathon, I will, and if not, I will just explain the prompts at the end and pick a couple more books to fit them. And I think that's all the explanation I have, so let's get into rolling. Alright, let's kick things off with our first roll. That was actually in the 20 spot, which I haven't hit in quite a few months, so that is a genre prompt. Okay, so for our first roll, I actually got it in the 20-point spot, which I feel like hasn't happened in quite a while, but that means I have a genre prompt. So I've got my blue bin. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a shake. And let's go with this one. Nonfiction. Okay, give me a second to go find something. Okay, so I might be bending the prompt a little bit, but for nonfiction, I'm going to be reading Civil War Poetry in Prose by Walt Whitman. I'm putting this under nonfiction because poetry is not really fiction. I mean, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. And also, the prose in here is mostly like excerpts from letters, so that's nonfiction. And I just kind of really want to read this. I'm not super into like war narratives, but war poetry I really like. And I haven't read as much Walt Whitman as I wish I did, so I'm remedying that. And this also will fulfill the prompt for elemental studies, which is to read a book under 100 pages for the magical readathon. I don't think I mentioned this, but the calling that I'm going for, the prompts that I have to fulfill, are for the Moon Warden thing, and so there's 5 prompts for that, and so this covers one of them, and I'm glad. Moving on, let's get to roll number 2. And that's a 10-point, so it's another genre prompt. Okay, and for our second roll, I got it in the 10-point spot, which means I won't have to use my punishment jar because I use that if I roll in the same spot all 4 times. And it also means it's another genre prompt, so I've got the blue bin back out. I'm gonna shake it up and go for something at the bottom, maybe? Can try this one. This is sci-fi or paranormal. I'm gonna go look at my shelf. Okay, so for a sci-fi or paranormal, I'm going to go with Break the Bodies, Haunt the Bones by Micah Dean Hicks. I bought this at work a couple weeks ago just because the cover is stunning. I love the colors on it, and also that title is really intriguing. And the inside flap says it's about ghosts, and that's paranormal. So this is my pick. I'm not sure if it covers any of the prompts that I need to cover for the magical readathon. One of them is like top of the TBR, which like it's up there, but it's not like the top of my TBR right now. So I feel like that'd be fudging things a little bit. And yeah, 2 other prompts that I have to cover are like a book that features healers and a book with a trope you like, which I feel like I'm not gonna know until I read a book. So maybe this will fit one of them. Who knows? Moving on, we are on to roll number 3. And that's actually another 20, so that's an aesthetic prompt. Okay, so I did not expect to roll in the 20 spot again, but I did, and that means this time we have an aesthetic prompt. So I've got my green bin instead of the blue one. So we're gonna shake it up and see what prompt we get. Oh, of course, they're all clumping together. Let's go with this one. Okay, this one's warm tones. I feel like I pulled this out every single time I have to pull from the aesthetic jar, so I'm not doing this. I'm gonna pull again. Honestly, I should just put that one to the side when I do this because I've gotten it so many times. It deserves to be in timeout. Let's go with this one instead. Oh, I've pulled 2, but I can only look at one because they were stacked, so we're gonna go with the one I looked at, and that is horizontal title on the spine. Is that correct? Did I like phrase that correctly? It means like if you're looking at it, so the book is this way and the words go this way. So I want one where the words go this way on the spine. I think I phrased it correctly on my prompt, but I don't know. I'm gonna see what I have. Alright, so I had 2 in mind. The first thing I thought of was Inheritance, which is right over here, which I meant to read in December because I wanted to finish the Aragon series, the Inheritance cycle, last year, and I didn't. I abandoned it, and so I know I have to read that sooner rather than later, but now is not the time. Instead, I'm going with Knots by Stieg. You're gonna have to correct me on this one because this is a Norwegian writer, but it's Gunhild Oyehag. I don't speak Norwegian. I probably butchered that, but if you can see, the letters go this way. So Knots is a collection of short stories, which fulfills the prompt for spells and incantations for the magical readathon, which is great, and also I just really want to read this, so this could also work for top of my TBR, but I think I can't double up on prompts for that. But yeah, this is another book that I bought at work actually, and what attracted me was the hot pink cover, but also it just sounds really cool, so I'm very glad to be getting this on my TBR for the month. And here we are with our last roll. And that's another 20, so that's a third genre prompt. Okay, I really can't believe this happened, but I got it in the 20 spot yet again for the fourth roll. I'm really glad that that second roll got it in the 10, because if I got it in the all 20s, it'd be great for points and my book buying budget, but I would have had to pull from the punishment jar, which isn't really a punishment because they're all books that I want to read. But whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So because it was in the 20 point spot, that is yet another genre prompt, our third of this month. And so I've got the blue bin back out, and we're gonna shake it up a little bit and see what it gives us this time. We had nonfiction and we had sci-fi and paranormal, so why must they all stick together? Go with this one, upside down. Oh, that's really funny. Poetry or play. So I already have some poetry on here, but I guess I'm getting some more, so let me go grab something. Okay, so I will be reading for the poetry slash play prompt Almost Home by Madison Kuhn, and I bought this at, you guessed it, my work a couple weeks ago. Actually, this one much more recently than the other ones that are already on this list, but I'm glad I'm actually going to read books that I buy, because I feel like lately I haven't been doing that, especially last month, because I only read manga and so much of it was digitally. I was neglecting my physical collection a little bit, but I'm really glad to see some of these books that I bought recently getting put on my TBR. But yeah, this is a poetry collection that I saw and bought because I love poetry. And I think I'm gonna count this for top of my TBR because I haven't read poetry in a hot minute and I've been yearning for some to read. And also, April is poetry month, so it's very fitting, and yeah, top of my TBR, fits the poetry genre. This is the last book on my Skee-B-R for April. This was a surprisingly kind round. Okay, and my final Skee-B-R for April this year is this, which is surprisingly small and I think very doable. So we have Break the Bodies, Haunt the Bones for a sci-fi or paranormal. We have Civil War poetry and prose for nonfiction, Almost Home for poetry, and Knots for a book with horizontal title. 3 of these fit my prompts for the magical readathon. Civil War poetry and prose is a book under 100 pages. Knots is an anthology or collection of short stories, and Almost Home is top of my TBR. Maybe this one will fit one of my other 2 prompts. I don't know. The other 2 prompts are a book featuring healers and a book with a trope you like, so I won't know until I read it. But yeah, this was a really quick month. I feel like I'm gonna get through these books pretty quickly and like pretty early on, so I will get to do a lot of mood reading, I guess. I'm just in shock, not only because the Skee-B-R was so nice to me, but also I just rolled really well this month. I rolled way better than I normally do. But yeah, that's it for me, I guess. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!